Good morning, Dr. Robin, aka Robin. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm excited for this conversation today.
Thank you. Same. Nothing better in the morning than talking to somebody like you who is the expert on resilience. But if you can just tell our community who maybe hasn't seen your incredible work and what you do, just can you give us a quick little thing about yourself?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, I'm a mom of three teenagers. So I do resiliency in the wild each and every day, navigating motherhood and entrepreneurship and all the things. And I have been studying human resiliency and well-being and performance for over 20 years. I was teaching in the university. And a wee while ago, I moved my program out, which means that now I'm running my own company where I've been able to publish some books on the topic, and I get to work with groups all around the world, helping them find their resiliency and their well-being so that way they can kind of make what matters most matter most in their lives.
I love that. And, kudos to you and everything that, you are accomplishing and continue to accomplish. And I'm just laughing because prior to our little conversation about having, I have 4 kids, you have 3 kids, that is a lesson on resilience and patience all on its own. Now, that for sure is a podcast. I think it's a whole series all on its own, quite frankly. But God bless you. Yeah, I've got between 26 and 16. So fun times, right?
I love teenagerhood. Let me tell you, I found like littlehood was super tricky. Just my life circumstances were really wobbly.
Mhm.
And I feel like I got my stride when my kiddos went into their teenagerhood. And it has been such an amazing like season. And ours now are 16, 18, and 20. And I just wish this type of teenagerhood for other people.
Oh, wow. Because, let's sort of dive into that.
Sure.
We'll get into the pre-teenage year story in a moment, but I really take my hat off to you because I think that there's a lot of women that I know, and obviously this is what you do for a living, really struggle with teenagehood. And it's that push pull. They're wanting their independence. Parents aren't wanting to let go. There's so many different things, sort of around that. So, because our podcast is sort of short, I think this is, again, a series.
Yeah.
Why do you say it is sort of like the best years? Like, what is a few secrets or tips? Like, please share.
Oh, there you go. Well, as I said, so when they were really little, I personally wasn't in such a great place with my own
Mm,
livelihood and my own like relationship situation. So when they were little, everything just felt like it was just one crisis and chaos after the other. And then when I got myself in a place where I felt more resourced, I was more grounded, I was more just aware, I
mm,
found that I was really able to lean into the adolescent season more. And some of the kind of things that I kind of think about, first and foremost, I wholeheartedly believe like we do the hard work, especially in littlehood, and then we
yes.
get to reap the reward in adolescence. So like you have already imparted a lot of the good
Mm,
boundaries, the character, the values, the things that really matter most. You've already laid that foundation when they're little. And then what we're going to see is just trials and reps of when they get to start to figure it out on their own. So that idea about, being a loyal friend, being a hard worker, having good character, like to me,
mm.
those are all the things that I really, I'm raising good humans. And you know what? As an academic who was in the university for 20 years, grades to me, it's like you want to have solid enough grades that'll get you in the doors that you want to walk through, but you do not need A plus in everything to be able to do that. So I have like absolved myself and my children from this pressure of figure out what you want to do, get those grades, and like, you got to get that nailed in if you want to have a successful adulthood. Because at the end of the day, it's like it's their peer relations, it's their
Mm.
self-respect, it's those character values, which I think is what adolescence is really all about. We can teach anyone skill. You can't really teach somebody not to be a jerk, right? So I want good people and that
That
are
is so
hireable,
true.
coachable, likable, and then the other stuff works itself out. So I think one of the biggest things is like giving ourselves permission not to think that this is like make or break their futures. Right now, this is the season for like exploring and figuring things out. And again, this is the messy middle. And once we just embrace it's the messy middle. And the other little kind of tidbit I can tell you, when you're having a conversation with a teenager, this is one of the ones my kids shared back with me that they appreciated probably one of the most. was every time we have a conversation, it doesn't have to be about the big thing that we're trying to get through. So let's
Mm.
say your kid's struggling with, maybe they're struggling in school, or they're struggling with their peers, or they're struggling in an area. Every single time we get them in the car or we get them like one on one, we don't have to talk about that big thing that's going on. Give them
Wow.
freedom and just a little bit of ease that sometimes they can just be teenagers and we can talk about like other stuff.
Grace and space is what I hear you
Yes.
saying,
Yes.
right? I love that. I started to jot down some things to go back to, but everything you said is so incredibly valuable. And, I always say, having four, you make some mistakes with the first, you get better with the
Yep.
second, and now, then you sort of get grounded. And I love what you said in the beginning because I had very similar experiences where you were like, I needed to ground myself first. When the kids were little, there was some chaos. And, it's always about, who's bleeding the most or who's,
Yes. Yeah.
has the most homework or who's got this or that. You're sort of in survival mode almost. And you said something so important where you said you get to reap the benefits. I feel like, and I will say I'm guilty as well, that sometimes I need to remind myself and pull back and say, I need just to sit back and enjoy this moment. I'll just share a really quick story with you.
Please.
Remember being in an interview with a teacher. And it's funny because most of the kids would either get interviews or not, but I would do all the interviews. I just
Yeah.
want to hear, like you said, how are they doing? Not so much academically, but are they good with, do they show empathy? Do they show initiative? Do they show gratitude? It's all the things that to me build character. And my second child, God love him, he's always been my most challenging. I'm a second child, so I get to
Yeah.
say that as well. He's most like me. And anyways, that's again a whole nother conversation. But I remember the teacher saying, he's so helpful, he's so polite, he can't do enough. And I sat there like, I went, are you talking about like Nico? Like, are you sure
Yeah.
you've got the right assessment? And I laughed it off because I thought, man, that was sort of like a moment for me. What am I missing? And I realized too, and I think parents need to understand that when the kids come home, they've been working so hard
Yes.
to keep their crap together. And there's a lot of crap out there,
Yeah.
right? So many times, oh, what do you have to worry about? You're a kid, you got the life. There's a lot for them to worry about. And they're things that seem little to us are monumental to them. So don't discount that. And so when they come home and unload on us,
Yeah.
we're kind of like, well, thanks. Don't I get the good parts? But I love what you said. You said, take the moment that when you're in the car, talk about music or talk about the video game they're playing or something outside of that big thing. Was that sort of like a saving grace for you? Or did you
Oh,
have an
yeah.
aha moment like that as well?
Yeah. Okay. So my aha moment, this one, and I share this one quite readily when I'm working with groups, is I recall when, so in grade 9, so Hunter was in his junior year, and I have, again, so this Hunter's my oldest, then I have Ava in the middle, and then Jax is my littlest.
I have a hunter too. When you said hunter, I'm like, okay, that's
Yes.
so
So
funny.
okay, so grade 9, I'm in that university circuit, right? I'm the young professor. I've like poured myself into this, kind of this dream job, which by me leaving my dream job is actually how I found happiness, but that's perhaps another conversation.
Oh
But
no, we're going
I
to talk about
there
that
you go.
after
So I like
teenager.
went so deep into like being the academic, right? The university professor at a young age. And I remember when Hunter was in grade 9, right before I headed out the door to work and he was off to school, he goes, Mama, I have a huge basketball game after school. I need you to be there. And I was like, 100%, like I will be there. And I remember actually almost like basking in this idea that like, how cool is it? My kid still wants me there, right? Like, and I walked into my office and I told, people around me, I'm like, hey, I'm leaving early today to go see Hunter play. Anyway, so then end of day rolls around and I'm leaving the university. And then all of a sudden one person stopped and was like, oh, hey, Robyne, can I just ask you a quick question? A student stopped. Oh, Dr. Hanley-Dafoe, can I ask you this? And by the time I actually was able to physically get out to the venue where Hunter was playing, it was the fourth quarter, right? So now I'm like, I got to the end of the game pretty much. And I'm sitting there and I was just relieved that I got there. And I'm in the stands at the buzzer goes off. Hunter comes up to the stands after the end of the game and he gives me a big hug. He's like, oh, I'm so glad you're here. And I'm like, dude, I would never miss this. Of course, this stuff matters. And he's like, but quick question, Mama, have you ever been late for a meeting? And I was like, well, not really. He's like, have you ever been late for a flight or have you ever been late for a keynote? And I'm like, well, no, Hunter, I can't be late for those things because those things are really important. And as
Okay,
soon
and
as
you're going to make me cry.
those words came out of my mouth,
Oh,
I was just like, I'm doing it wrong. And I looked at him, and again, I was just so embarrassed with my own self that I lost focus on what mattered most. And then Hunter
Mm.
looked at me, and again, my boys are giants. So he looks down at me and he goes, "Hey, he goes, hey, listen to this. I'm in junior. I have 4 more years of high school left. You got loads of time to make this right. You have loads of time, mama." He goes, "I always am going to need you here." He goes, "It's
Oh,
okay." But he goes, "You have
that's gonna
four
make
years.
me.
And he's like, "Figure it out, mama, because you've always told me family comes first. Let's get back on track. Let's get you back on track."
I
And
love that. Oh my
yeah,
God.
and he
And
gave
what,
me,
oh,
yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say he gave me the most beautiful gift of just compassion and this idea that like, mom, like I need you, and we've always been tight, and this idea that he just modeled how I just would hope that I could show up for my kid when they make a mistake. And let me tell you, I have since that moment in that like old decrepit gym and those bleachers with my
Yeah.
boy, if there's ever a choice, work or family, I always pick family. And I have never regretted that since. I have never not picked family.
The hunter theory, that's what we're going to
Yeah.
call it. I
Yeah.
love that. You know, it just goes, so that is such a testament though to you as a parent and what you
Thank
taught
you.
them, right? And I hear so many times parents say to me, you know, I taught them this, I taught them that. I learn, and it sounds like you like look at your background and your education. To me, it's like they taught me patience, they taught me compassion, they taught me empathy when, you know, I felt like there was nothing left, right? And the gift he gave you was that aha moment of, hey, and you took it where some people would be annoyed and, okay, don't correct me and don't
Yes.
whatever. But you took that and you ran with it. And so, wow, I love that. Tell Hunter,
Will
I
do.
am, my eyelashes are probably going to need regluing.
Oh,
But that is so beautiful. And thank him for that.
thank
And so
you.
I guess I want to go now sort of backwards a little bit.
Sure.
You say you never regretted it. Let's talk a little bit about, say, the younger you. You
Yeah.
know, growing up, did you always know you wanted to be a doctor and a resilience expert and everything? Like, what was your dream as a younger you?
So in with like pretty radical candor, I never even imagined I was going to make it past 18. I had no aspirations of anything post-secondary. I struggled so hard in school, like literally from elementary school. I never imagined a future. And I recall when other people would talk about like their futures and what they, when I grew up, I want to do this. To me, when I would look forward, I actually couldn't even see a big future. Like I never really thought it. And again, what was so kind of interesting in my own experience, like as somebody who struggled so much to fit in, I didn't feel a sense of belonging. I really was just really, lost for a lot of years. And again, if it's okay to share with you, when I was
Yes, please.
when I was in grade 10, I ended up dropping out of high school because it was like I am just not, this is not for me. And I actually even recall an educator saying to me in grade 8 that they wish that there was like a level below like trades or basic or remedial that they could put me in, because they said you're just not smart enough. And like
Oh,
this isn't something, there isn't a place for you here. And so when I kind of thought about what do I get to do when I'm older, like I never really imagined what that could look like. However, after that experience, when I dropped out of school, like a lot of kids who need the most help, we ask for it in all the wrong ways. And
oh,
how
yes.
I was asking for help was in the form of addictions, self-harm, awful relationships. Like I was just in that spiral. And it wasn't until my mom showed up one day though and said, we're moving. My family ended up moving, and they said, my mother said the reason we were moving is because I needed a fresh start and a second chance. And she didn't believe I was going to get that in the town we lived in. So my
Okay.
family left, and then I started a comeback, and yeah,
I love that. So I have to stop you
of course,
because
please.
your story so resonates with me personally. If you know anything about my story, I was the
Yes.
same, but I wanted to be somebody, but I didn't know what. I wanted to be a lawyer. But like you, I struggled in school. And it wasn't actually until I had kids that I realized that there are different kind of learners, and I'm a
Yes.
visual learner,
Mhm.
right? And nobody knew that. It's the same, I go back to my mom, and she struggled, but she needed glasses, but they didn't know. So it's
Mhm.
sort of that progressive where we just now understand so much more about our brain and
Yes.
how people function, and how they thrive and survive and do well. But it
Absolutely.
really resonates with me, and I can't imagine a younger you feeling that way. So, for the young future leaders that are feeling this way, and I say future leaders because we don't know who's going to listen to our podcast,
Yes.
you so need to hear Robin's story, because that is a story of hope
Mhm.
and a story of resilience and a story that didn't end when she was 18. And I don't think you need to figure it out. That's the
Yes.
thing. I always said to my kids, they're like, especially my older son was like, I don't know what I want to do. All my friends, this person wants to be that, this person wants to be
Yes.
that. And I remember sitting in the guidance office. Thank God I had a good guidance counselor for him, because my guidance counselor basically said, you're not smart. You'll never amount to anything.
Yeah.
Go marry rich, have a few kids, you'll be fine. I'm like, he's still my beating heart. Like, I
Yeah.
want children, of course, but I wanted something else first.
Mhm.
But again, this wasn't about me. And we were sitting there, and he just said, I just don't want to waste your money and go off and party
Mhm.
because I don't know what I want to do. And the guidance counselor closed his books. He goes, see those two assholes behind me? He goes, they're still in debt and living in my basement. He goes, that is the smartest, most intelligent thing
Mhm.
anybody's ever said to me. Now, that's great.
Yeah.
And so we let him find himself, but that was with years of real struggle. And I
Yeah.
think we put so much pressure on ourselves as young people, but then parents too, for their kids to find, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? My thing is, take a business course, go take
Yes.
something, just if school is your thing,
Yes.
and just go find yourself, backpack
Yeah.
across Europe or travel or do whatever. And he eventually came into his own. And this is where I want to continue your story. Is he basically, I said, you are such a good person. You are all heart. He goes, where's that going to get me? I said, everywhere,
Everywhere.
which now I'm going to turn it back to you.
Yeah.
So your parents loved and cared for you enough to say, this is not working for you. You talk, and I don't know if you want to get into that at all, where you said you turned to the wrong places and spaces
Yeah.
for answers and support. Do you want to talk anything about the addiction piece, how you got out of it besides moving, and then kind of continue on, or how do you feel
Yeah.
about that?
No, I'm happy to. Thank you for giving me permission to explore it. And again, I loved how you showed up for your son, right? Like that's the thing. And what I think is so interesting, where parents, I think a lot of parents that I work with, where I see struggle, is that their sense of like success as a parent is like, did I raise like successful people, right? In terms of like, did I say like, oh, my kid goes to Harvard, my kid goes to University of Toronto, my kid's
Yeah.
an engineer, because that somehow is like in their mind, this like measuring stick that I'm a successful parent.
Yeah.
And to me, one of the things that I learned so quickly, and I think it's because I was living as an adolescent in the reverse, where I had remarkably loving, successful, amazing parents, and me being off course wasn't a reflection of them.
Mm.
Me being off course and like this beautiful disaster at 16 was because of my own stuff. It was my own untreated learning disabilities that made school difficult. It was my ADHD, which made me so hypersensitive to rejection and feedback that I wasn't open to learning and growing. And so again, I knew that my misbehavior and my stress behavior wasn't a reflection of my parents. So
Mm.
that's how I can hold the argument that your successful teenager or your successful kid isn't necessarily a reflection of you. It's you in relationship with them. And I know my parents weren't to blame for my stuff, just as I wouldn't take my kids' success as being mine other than I gave them a safe place to start from. Like I gave them stability and a mama who they knew had their back in anything, right? Like,
That
and
is
yeah,
key. That is
yeah,
so important. I'm so glad you brought that up, because so many times, they're kids. They're going to hopefully they don't get into trouble to, police or legal, whatever.
yeah,
But I've always said to my kids, and a lot of parents won't say this, is I've got your back. make
100%.
good decisions,
Yeah.
every time you walk, like, of course you lay the foundation, but they've always known I've had their back. And it
Yeah.
sounds like you parented the exact same way.
Yeah.
And just because you haven't doesn't mean you can't change that now,
Right.
right?
Absolutely.
Because people
Absolutely.
think, well, I've already screwed it up and I've already whatever, but you can change. And I don't care if they're 5 or 35,
Yeah.
you can still be there for them and have their back. You can, like, I have a thing where I talk about owning your shift.
Yes.
You own your shift and your shit in
Yeah.
spades, and
Yeah.
your parents must, love and adore and be so like proud and, celebrate who you are today because of the struggle and everything that you've gone through. But not only that, did you get to the other side, you now own it and teach it. And I love you even more now than I did
Oh,
before. So that is just so beautiful. So
thank you.
so now you're sort of, so then you move.
Mhm.
And so I don't think addiction goes away,
No.
but does the sort of temptation and the friends and everything change, or what happened at that
So,
point?
and this is, I love this question because this very much is like the origin story as to why I became a like a scholar. Like, this is why I chose the field of resiliency. So imagine, my parents show up for me. And when people show up for you, you show up for them, right? I was able to get clean. I was able to get sober. I was getting ready to re-enroll in school. Like, things were looking up. And I also happened to get my driver's license where I could drive by myself. So I had this brand new driver's license for just 1 week. And I'm driving home in this new community, and it was later at night, and a snowstorm rolled in. And I didn't know how to drive well in the snow.
Mm.
And my vehicle ended up sliding off the road. It went down an embankment, and my vehicle ended up crashing through the ice. And my vehicle sank in the Otonabee River with me trapped inside. So imagine I'm this 16-year-old
Okay,
girl.
I'm having
Yeah.
like anxiety.
Yeah. So it's,
What?
yeah. So I have this catastrophic car accident, but this is what was so amazing about this experience. So the vehicle is sinking. And in that moment, I noticed I wasn't feeling scared. I was feeling angry. And I was angry that I couldn't protect my mom from what was about to happen. And when I started to think about my mom, it's like this emotional echo because my mother had always told me that Robin can do hard things. And in that moment, I was faced with this wicked challenge. And I just thought, you know what? I can do hard things. And I was able to wiggle out the seatbelt. I wasn't able to open up the car door because the water pressure had already started to crush this vehicle. But with the vehicle crushing, I was able to take my fingertips and dig them into where the window met the door, pull the window hard enough on a track to like slide it down the door. And I was able to swim out the window. But then I had no idea which way was up or down. So this vehicle is being in this current, and I'm churning in this current with this car. And in that moment, I thought the only way I can get my bearings was to exhale because I knew my bubbles would rise in water. And I remember swimming after those little bubbles. And there was even a moment where I thought, oh my gosh, I might make it. And then something hit my face. It was like the smash. And I realized it was my face hitting the ice because the river's frozen over. But in that moment, I was able to it was a scramble. I got to the middle of the channel. I was able to break through the ice, but all I could do was hold the edge. And every time I would pull myself up, the ice would break. I'd fall back in. But that night, this is so amazing. That night, there was a gentleman by the name of Joseph. And Joseph just happened to be driving along that road, happened to see my snow, like my tire tracks in the snow. Joseph pulls over. He sees me out there holding onto the ice. And I'm wearing like jeans, winter coat, boots. Like I am struggling to stay up. And he grabs wood and a chain from the back of his pickup truck. And Joseph used the wood to make an X to support his body weight. And he actually crawls out onto that ice. He slides out the chain, wraps it around my body, and drags me to shore. He was actually awarded the Governor General's Award for Bravery, which is the highest accommodation. But this is what was so awesome. A wee while later, I woke up in the
There's more?
hospital.
I'm
Yeah,
like,
there is.
I
There is.
can't get past it. It's still, but okay, there's
Wake
more.
up in the hospital, and my mother's there. And she's like, Robbie, how did you do it? How'd you get out of this? And I said to my mother, it's very much because you told me I could do hard things. And she leaned in really close and said, well, that's not really what we ever had in mind when we told you that, but we're glad it worked in your favor. And that was this amazing turning point for me
Yeah.
where I became so committed to earning my miracle. Like I was going to use every day from that way forward to just do right and to do good and be of service. And I made so many mistakes afterwards, right? Recoveries are never linear.
No,
So
but
I
mistakes are
tried,
okay.
absolutely, I made so many mistakes trying to figure it out, but I committed to getting back into school. And then I started this like campaign of learning about human resiliency, figuring out how did I survive that? How do I help other people? Because I think hope is a strategy and I want to share it with as many people as I possibly can.
I'm never speechless. I am speechless. I have to applaud you. And when I see you in February or sooner,
Yeah,
I'm going to give you a big hug. That
thank you.
is not a story of resilience. It is, but I almost feel like there's so many other layers, like there's hope, but
Yeah,
you nailed it. It's a miracle.
it is.
And the bravery and courage of another life helping to save yours. There's so many layers. And I love the mother story where you're like, well, that you told me to do hard things. She's like, I was not thinking that, but
Yeah,
kudos to you, right? But
absolutely.
I'm trying to get my head around you. Again, I'm sure everything happened very fast
Yeah.
but you were able to think at a young age, little to no experience of having car accidents
Yeah.
or being submerged in water in a vehicle under ice.
Yeah.
You were still able to rationally think, okay, well, if I exhale, the bubbles go this way.
Yeah.
It is, wow.
Mhm.
You must, I mean, I'm in awe that number one, you survived. And number two, you're able to tell the story because a lot of people, maybe block that out,
Yeah.
but you were able to really articulate how you felt throughout that whole
Mhm.
experience. And now you've taken this beautiful story and I mean, yours is on very much the extreme, but I feel
Mhm.
like so many people, even prior to the C word and, after the pandemic,
Yeah.
people are still feeling that feeling of drowning
Yeah.
and they don't know how to
Absolutely.
get out.
Yeah.
And I just say, if Robin can do it, you can do it. There's always that hand out, which is
Mhm.
the whole premise of why I started the I Am Unbreakable and why we're having the conversation.
Yeah.
I love your courage, your depth, and
Thank you.
everything you stand for. I so applaud you. I
Thank
so
you.
applaud you. And thank you for actually now taking, because, like you said, it could have really gone both ways. You could have taken that and said, poor woe is me. And now I have a reason, for my addiction.
Yes.
But you took that. And that is where I see, you are now, I thought I was, a resilience queen. You are the resilience queen to be able to take that and now to manifest it, excuse me, into something that helps hundreds and thousands of other people. Because
Yeah.
even that story, maybe you can and can't, but because you actually lived it. But don't you think that story sort of speaks to maybe other things that have happened in your life or your clients or people who you meet their life?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. And again, it feels like such a gift because you're absolutely right. Like there was moments where things got really dark afterwards. But again, being able to recognize like, okay, so how did that all unfold? It was just one right decision. It was just like I didn't have to figure the whole thing out. I just had to break it into just pieces. And I think anytime we look at the big picture, it's overwhelming. We don't see a way through. Like it's just, again, the human condition just can take in so much information and it doesn't even know where to start. And sometimes I think that's why people get so stuck when we are able just in the moment to say like, what can I do? Just one right step. And like, what's just the one thing and just focus on like what's immediately in front of you. I feel like that's how I and other people are able to get through even the most difficult seasons of their life when they just literally build it piece by piece. And then if you make a wrong move, that's okay. We just don't want to make two in a row, right? We want to go back, reevaluate, and then try again. It's like we always get to choose next. And for me, any situation like, yeah, this was a pretty catastrophic car accident. Of course, I was able to use that strategy kind of tested in the max.
Oh, yeah.
However, When I'm showing up, even in my day job, when I'm showing up for my family, it's just like, what's the right decision that I can make just in this moment? And keeping it within that, like, closer versus trying to have this big forecast of predicting the future. And the example I'll share with you just really briefly, if I may, is
Oh, please.
I feel like so many of us try to live life like it's a chess game and we want perfect knowledge, right? Like chess is a game of like perfect knowledge, even though there's strategy, we can see everything in front. We know people have studied this, people are really good at it. I'm not a chess player. I'm really good. I play poker, metaphorically, because I don't have all the information. All I know is there's some general rules and I play the hand I'm dealt. And I don't ask, why did I get that card? And why did that person get that hand? And why did this happen? I'm not doing that. That won't serve me. It's literally with what's in front of me and with the little bit of information that I can see, what's the best choice that I can make for my family and me. And so I am a big advocate, metaphorically, of like, let's stop trying to make a chess game into poker and vice versa, because life is far more unpredictable and there's a lot of unknowns. And I've released the need for perfect knowledge, and I'm willing to trust and work with what I see and what I can do and what I know to be true.
I love that. And you said so many important things, I mean, throughout the whole podcast, but just now about doing something tiny, because people feel overwhelmed when, somebody says, oh, well, you have to change. You have to stop being an addict, or you have to go to school or figure this or whatever, their obstacle is. I love the fact, and I say this to all my clients and anybody who will listen as well, is it's always small steps. It's not one big grandiose thing that you're going to do. It's always those small, tiny steps that take you to the level you want to be. And it sounds like even in, the most extreme situation in your life, personal life,
Yes.
and you are now the expert, you took these small steps of, okay, I got to wiggle out of the seatbelt. Okay, I've got to, take down. It wasn't like I've got to bust through and, army crawl out of the thing. You took it bite by bite, step by step. And that is profound information, because I don't think that's ever, especially sort of in our day and age, it's never really, and I don't even know that a lot of people understand that you don't need to solve the big picture. And and it's funny because getting to know you a little bit more now, you even said that with your children. It wasn't about solving a big problem.
Yeah.
And you really reiterate that to them. Is that something that you feel has sort of brought you to where you are today for
Yeah.
where you are now? Because I also want to ask you about, kind of you giving up the hustle and the bustle and the busy after too. But
Yeah.
is that what brought you to where you are today? You knew something needed to change and you took the small steps to get there?
Yes. And for me, what it was about was like giving myself permission that like I can't figure it all out in anything, but I can figure out just the next thing. And so breaking things down was like a way of simplifying for me. But I also saw so quickly that consistency compounded. So I'll give you another quick example. So when I was writing
Please.
my first book, sitting there imagining writing a book, it's like, wow, this is a really hard thing to do. And how many of us have those dreams and goals? Like, I want to write a book. What I did is I want to be a writer, and I'm going to write 1 hour every single day. And whether I felt like it or not, I literally was just 1 hour a day. I am going to work towards creating this piece of writing, this piece of knowledge. And so again, whether I felt like it or not, I would just every day just do a little bit. And then I would have moments where I'd take a step back and I'd be like, like, wow, I just did another 1,500 words. Like, wow, I just did another. And what was so amazing is I never had one day a week that I could devote to writing without interruptions, because I'm a mama, I'm working. I don't have one free day.
Of course.
But if I did 1 hour every single day,
Would you break it
I
up?
made it, yeah. So I made it myself a full day out of using 1 hour every single day. So I was getting that like 1 hour like a day, but I was getting a full day once a week, and I was able to meet all my publishing goals. So
I love
again,
that.
I have learned that like the little stuff isn't that little after all. Like the little stuff is going to make the biggest difference. So again, I always kind of remember it's like, the tortoise won the race, right? I feel like we always forget the parable there. It's like the slow, steady, consistent is going to serve us better. And I'll share with you, like when I said, like after my accident, I was building a comeback. I made a lot of mistakes because I was trying to like rush healing, and you can't heal faster than time can go. So I learned that lesson that I can't heal faster than time goes. And again, it's building that patience. And I'll tell you, I am not a patient person by nature, but I'm a
Same.
big advocate for winning strategies. And I saw very early that rushing is a losing strategy, and consistent practices, small steps, is literally the winning strategy. And I love a good strategy that wins.
That is that again worth its weight in gold because I feel like in this day and age, we're all connected.
Yes.
Everything's instant. Oh my goodness, the internet is down. The world is over, right?
Yeah.
And so the fact that you're saying, you bring back the tortoise won the race, that is
Yeah.
so true. Small steps,
Mhm.
which creates profound,
Yes.
profound change in the long run, or even in, short, medium, and long-term goals.
Mhm.
And, I've often used the analogy where people will come to me, and again, it's a health, but it's also a fitness goal for
Mhm.
them where, I don't have an hour to work out. I don't have whatever. And it's like, do you have 20 minutes? Yeah, but what could I do in 20 minutes? I'm like a
Wow.
power walk.
A
And
lot.
then, in another 3, hours, can you do, some stretching? Can you
Mhm.
do some abs? Can you do whatever exercise they like to do? And then it is an hour a day.
Mhm.
And that's my question to you too. Would you do like a solid uninterrupted hour? I know you said no, but would you sit half an hour, leave, and then, but just make sure you always got that hour in? Or was it always like an hour of interrupted or not?
So, Mike, whenever I do that, like that strategy for writing that you're referencing there, I would try to make it as uninterrupted as possible,
Good.
right? And so that might mean it's like, looking at the kids' schedule, looking at all the things that are going on, like what's my best chance of having an uninterrupted hour, and like just communicating it with the family, being like, hey, and they know I have my writing hours, right? So I'd be like, hey, folks, jumping into my office, 11 to 12, going to try super hard to get this done, and they're like, go get it, mom, like
I
lock
love
in,
that.
dial in, we got you. And so you get
Wow.
other people on board to support your goals and your dreams. It's the same as, for example, I'm a huge believer in, like, again, slow, steady cardio. I feel like I'm a bit angry right now because people are like hating on cardio. Slow, steady state cardio for women is a gift. We
Oh,
can give ourselves that, reduce all cause mortality by like 50%. Like, there is nothing wrong with a good 30-minute brisk walk, whether it's outside, whether it's on your treadmill. Like, I think we need to stop hating on steady state cardio
I know. And you know
because
what? We
it's
need it.
good.
Like people
Yeah.
like you and I that are go, go, go. And I think you need that. A lot of times I'm like, I need to go for a walk because
Yes,
it grounds me. So,
exactly.
and I know it's like, oh, when you get to a certain age, it's all about strength training. That's important too.
Yeah,
But it's sort of like whatever works for you,
exactly. Yeah,
don't listen to the masses. But
yeah.
I love the fact that you live life by what I know on your own terms,
Mhm.
family first. You've made
Always.
some big changes. It sounds like in sort of your environment and,
Mhm.
going from the hustle and bustle, which, like I said, I so want to do and will do soon. I think self care for women is so important. And I
Mhm.
always say this, and there are days that are just, insanely busy, and so be it. But I am coming to realize that if I don't have an hour for myself, whether it's for writing, working out,
Mhm.
having a hot bath, eating bonbons, doing your
Yeah.
manicure, I don't care whatever makes you happy
Yep.
and whatever fulfills you and sort of hits the reset button. Don't you think that's sort of a life that is needs we need to step back and say, well, what can I do for me? So what
1,000%.
strategies
Yeah.
or what would you say when somebody's like, I don't have time? And I look, 4 kids, all in rep hockey, doing
Yeah.
this, doing that. I was that person that was burnt out but did for everybody,
Mhm.
right? But it's all about putting your mask on first.
Yeah.
So stress wisely. So
Mhm.
let's talk about what you would do or recommend for people like that can't get to where you are right now.
First of all, I just hold space to appreciate that it's like the struggle is real, right? Like it is hard, especially when we are comparing ourselves to all these highlight reels on social media that seems like everybody else has got this all figured out. And I
Okay.
call BS on that, right? Like it's
Yeah,
literally a highlight reel.
I
Yeah.
just need to say the reason for I am unbreakable and the tagline, the
Yeah.
struggle is part of the story, and
Yeah.
also tatted on my arm is a
Yeah.
reminder that the struggle is part of the story. This is supposed
Yes.
to happen. It's part of growth,
Yes.
right? So anyway, so when you look at the social media and they're in front of their boats or their houses and their kids are perfectly dressed, that is not reality.
No.
That is not reality. That's why I try to do things very organic, and let's talk about the obstacles and the tough stuff.
Yeah.
So anyways, I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
just had to,
Oh, I'm
it is
glad you got
annoying
finished.
because nobody posts like I'm having a really bad day and this is what and it's okay. So
Yeah.
anyways.
Or they do post it for attention seeking and they're crying and like again it's like a whole other odd psychological kind of trip that they're on. But
Correct.
like yeah, so and again I'm a magnet, like I have a social media presence that is very carefully curated because it is part of the work that I do. But like I don't post 99% of what's going on in my life, right? I use it as a channel for information sharing, for connecting, but there's also all this other stuff that I hold so dear and close to my heart because it's like, it's just, that's my stuff. And this is part of my work. It's not my whole life that's out there, just for kind of for context setting. Okay. So to answer your question about like, okay, folks have these full lives, right? It's full. How do they find time for themselves? Well, first of all, it's not selfish, it's science. You need to do it. I also make the argument that self-care is not a reward. Self-care is part of how you stay as a top performer, how you can show up hands on, hearts on, minds on for the people that matter most to you. To be able to do that, you have to commit to looking after yourself. So this becomes for me this idea of self-stewardship. I have a responsibility to be as well as I can be for the people that count on me. And when I had this really kind of, and I love how you brought up the oxygen mask because everybody says, oh, you have to put your oxygen mask on first. Well, recently I travel a lot with work and I was sitting beside a pilot and I was like, sir, can I ask you a question? And he was like, sure. I'm like, I need you to know something. I have seen that demonstration of the flight person, talking about her safety mask, put it on yourself first. I said, I'm a mama of 3 kids. And I got to tell you, I don't think I would be able to do that. I don't want to have to pick which kid in which order, but I literally I don't think I would be able to do that. And I said, so I need you to help me with this. And he was like, okay. I said, how many seconds if this cabin lost pressure do I have to get a mask on? And he looked around to make sure I think other people weren't listening to us. Yeah. And he said, best case scenario, he goes, lady, you probably have 10 seconds. That's why you put your mask on first. He goes, you wouldn't even be able to get it on your first kid. Ever since that, again, it was just reinforced. Yeah. Reinforced. It's like my biology wants to put my kids first. It wants me to be of service. Like it wants to look after my dad. Like my biology wants me to take care of everybody else. But there's a part of this biology that understands now that for me to do it, I got to be locked in. And it's not selfish, it is science. And interesting, I was on a podcast recently and the woman asked me like, oh, what's your morning routine? And I shared it to her. And she said like, oh my gosh, don't you feel guilty for taking that much time for yourself? Mm-hmm. And I didn't even hesitate. And I said, no, I feel guilty if I yell at my kids. I feel guilty if I don't do what I should do that I know makes me feel grounded and well-resourced and just more open and more in line with who I want to be as a human. Or if I'm short with my husband, that's when I feel guilty. If I know I could do something that puts me in an ideal state for my family and I choose not to do it, and then I have like create this like blast radius around me, that's when I feel guilty, when I know better and I don't do better.
I love that. So thank you to the pilot.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I had I'll just share with you as well. I had a similar situation because it would annoy me. It's like, put your mask on first and listening to these people. And I'd be nudging my husband going, that's never happening. Yeah. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's a therapist and I love her to pieces. She's so incredible. But she said, very similar to what the pilot said, she said, but you realize there's such a short time, like you will not be able to assist them by then. Like you will be gone.
Yeah.
And consider that sort of an analogy in your life. Women between the ages of 35 and 55, a lot of them sadly pass from stress-related disease and issues and cardiac and whatnot. Yeah. So put your mask on first because that's what they need because they need you there.
Yes.
And it was like, ooh, that really makes sense now. Now when I hear about when we're traveling and they put the mask on, I'm like, I'm not so resentful.
Yes.
Because it's kind of like, okay, I get it now,
Yeah.
but it's funny. We had sort of the same analogy.
Yeah.
And so, you said something really important, because really you've given us and the community and the audience just a wealth of information. But
Thank
I
you.
really want to go back to you as an incredible individual. And you talk about, this is what I let the public see. But in the back end, there, and you and I are both the same. I don't post what I had for dinner.
Yes.
I don't even know if I've posted anything about food or kids or
Yes.
life, or, the chaos. Having one child, let alone multiple children, can bring in, by chaos, I just mean even scheduling, right?
Yes.
Emotional needs,
Yeah.
physical, whatever it may be. So when you're in that chaos, what is it for you that sort of does ground you? You talk about a morning routine, and it's funny because I will just share with you, my morning routine is everything.
Yes.
I can listen to music. I take an hour, sometimes 45 minutes, sometimes an hour and a half to get ready
Yes.
for me, because I have my things, what I want to do. You obviously have your morning routine, and it just makes you feel like you can kind of get up and slay the day.
Yes.
Not every morning is like rainbows and unicorns, fine. But so when you've got all this stuff going on and you've got a keynote or you've got to do something, but your personal stuff is there, how do you manage that? Like for you personally, other people, can learn from what you do, but how do you as a person manage that?
Yeah. So again, the consistency of a predictable morning routine I find very helpful. So there are a few non-negotiables that I have in my morning that I, without a doubt, like I try really hard to stick with that. So for example, for me, it's as like, as soon as I get up, I go find coffee, right? So if I'm on the road, I'll go find a cup of coffee. I'll go for a walk every single morning. The first two things that I do is I grab my coffee and I go for a walk. And again, what I love is I could be anywhere in the world. And it's just a predictable pattern where I get up, I throw on kind of comfies and like go find coffee, which usually involves me having to walk and making sure I get 30 minutes. I try to get outside as soon as possible. As soon as possible, I try to get outside. And those are the two, as long as I can do that. And when I'm walking, I listen, some days I'm listening to a podcast. Sometimes I'm listening to an audiobook. Sometimes I'm just saying my prayers. Like it's just time for me to show up for myself, to like do a check-in and be like, who needs me on my A game today? What needs do I have that I have to make sure are looked after? And whenever life gets really full, like when life is really big, I always will do less. So for example, if I am navigating a lot of travel and work, but I know like stuff's going on at home and, I'm feeling like I have that split focus where my heart might be in Peterborough, but I'm on a stage in California, I simplify. So that means I'll order groceries and have them delivered. It means that we might have, if I'm home, it means we might have breakfast for dinner, right? Like I'll just simplify as much as I possibly can. I have a few, for example, even like outfits that I wear when I don't have the capacity to like put an outfit together, right? So,
I love that
I
tip.
got rid of my like 30 pair of jeans and now I have 2 pairs, light or dark, right? So I simplify because I don't have the cognitive energy, especially if I'm navigating something behind the scenes. So I know that go-to outfit for when I'm on stage. I use the exact same like luggage, travel when I'm packing, those routines. I simplify when things are tricky. And then this is the other part. When, let's say, for example, things are really good and maybe I'm feeling really brave today or I'm feeling like pretty fired up, I do the big thing. I start the big thing when I feel brave. So for example, when I launched my own podcast, I was so kind of nervous about it for a long time. And then one day I just woke up, happened to be having a good day, happened to having a good hair day. Like it felt like all the planets were in alignment. I'm like, wow, I'm feeling pretty good. And I'm like, what's a big scary thing that I need to use this feeling good to start, not to finish, not to like, just to start. And I'm like, F it, today's the day I record episode number 1. And like, I use the energy to really kind of help me channel the work that I need to do.
I love that. And I got to go back to the outfits because this is so incredibly important.
Yes.
But the whole, thank you for sharing that, because simplifying things, and I'm sure you know that some of the most successful people in the world use that same strategy.
Mhm.
When I was going through some stuff, I was fortunate enough to be able to work with Tony Robbins, and he has the exact same shirt and the exact same pants and the exact same shoes
Yeah.
for multiple months, days, years, performances, whatever, because it's one less thing that he needs to think about.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's, I don't know, I'm a fashion, I love what
Yes.
I implemented something. It was so stressful, and you maybe or don't know, you probably do, because you're using that strategy sometimes to think, okay, well, if I'm doing corporate but I really want to speak to this, so having that go-to outfit,
Yeah.
which sounds so small, is so huge.
Oh, yeah. Because otherwise we stand there paralyzed, right? Like we'll
Yeah.
stand there, try on 40 things. We're going to lose 20 minutes, maybe lose an hour. And then all of a sudden we start swirling. And then all of a sudden we notice like, it's like, oh, I gotta get back, my body isn't
Yeah.
cooperating. And then we start this narrative of like this negative self-talk, which we've never been able to hate ourselves healthy. And when we're in a distressed state, like, gosh, we are mean to ourselves. So I just literally avoid that, right? So this is, I think, what's kind of interesting. I know we have to face our challenges, right? We want to face our fears, we want to face our challenges. But I think a winning strategy is to know if I'm feeling wobbly, if I'm feeling disconnected, out of alignment, insecure, that's not the day I'm going to try and figure out what am I supposed to wear on one of the largest events that I'm doing that week.
Right.
No, I got the go-to. Whereas like trust but like trust your history with that outfit is what I'll actually tell myself. So for corporate, yep, I'm bringing out the red ninja suit. For schools, yep, I'm bringing out the approachable blazer and the cute jeans, right? Like, so I don't even have to, because when we're feeling all of the feels, our frontal cortex, which makes really great decisions and logic and problem solving, that part isn't steering the ship. The part that is like that frantic kind of, mind monkey that's just like gets us all tangled up in our own way. So simplifying, I think, is a really important strategy. So then we can use the resources that we do have, which may be limited, for the stuff that really matters.
But that is huge. And I think, that doesn't cost anybody anything
No.
to simplify things. And I think if we all, and I'm sure even yourself, for sure me, I look at my life, how can I simplify things? Even though I've got a lot of strategies and things down, I still think we can always do better. So for the people that aren't simplifying their lives, even just by picking the outfit or pre-planning, I think is so important. I know I've kept you forever, and I know that we can
all
talk
good.
probably for hours and hours. You've got a busy day. I'm going to ask you one last question, then I'd love to invite you back because we have so much to talk
Oh, I'd
about.
be honored.
And I
Honored.
love you to pieces. So
Oh,
I
I
want
echo
to
that.
ask you a question, and I got to be honest with you. Everybody gets stumped on this question
Okay,
because
I'm
it's
in.
something that is going to be personal to yourself.
Got it.
What does it mean to you to be unbreakable?
For me, to be unbreakable, it means that I lean into faith and not fear.
Well, you are the first person that answered just like that, and I love that. And so when you say lean into faith and fear, you talk a lot, I've taken a lot of what you've said, and you talk a lot about service and service to others and gratitude. Is that something that's really helped you? Because I know it helps me
Yes.
tremendously. It's sort of, I would say it's almost a selfish act for me because I feel so good when I help other people and when I'm a person of service. Would you say it would be the same for yourself?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It has brought purpose, it has brought meaning making, and it has just allows me to be my favorite self, right? It's not my best self, it's not my wisest self, it's not my most adult self. My favorite self is when I can just show up for other people and help them embrace the messy parts too, and give ourselves permission that every one of us are doing the best we can with the tools, the strategies, the energy, the knowledge that we have. And I just celebrate the imperfections. And that's where it's all about. And that's where I see the most strength. That's where I see like the beauty of the human condition when we drop all these masks and we just show up and be like, hey, you broken me too. Let's hang out.
Yeah, I love, oh my gosh. Okay, on that note, love you, love you, love you. Love your true, authentic self. The
Thank
fact that
you.
you share everything with us is profound.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being a guest, and we'll chat soon.
I look forward to it. Take good care. Thanks for having me.